Happy
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Today's meeting, Chair Mendoza is not able to attend, so he's already reached out to me and I will be chairing for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, first, I think let's check if we have enough commissioners here for quorum before we call the meeting to order.
Yes. The Commissioner Carrillo,
Here.
Commissioner Kofelt,
Here.
Commissioner Daniels,
Here.
Commissioner Deal,
Here.
Commissioner Gesselman,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Mendoza is absent, Commissioner Roberts,
Here.
Commissioner Work,
Here.
and Chair Monsalve.
Here, thank you.
You have a quorum.
All right, wonderful, thank you. Then let's proceed with calling to order the first meeting that we should have today, which is the meeting for AB 361. Let's start with the procedure for this meeting.
Okay.
Chair, I can speak to this. This is the same findings you've been making for months. Next month, or I'm sorry, on the 25th, I'll be giving a presentation just to update the commission as to the changes in the law that are effective now with AB 2449. But today, in order to continue to meet remotely until the governor rescinds his proclamation of emergency, these findings are before you for your consideration.
Thank you, Council.
Madam
And
Chair.
before we proceed, I think we should go over the procedure for the meeting in case there's public comment on the subject of AB 361.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So only staff and committee members should have their videos on during the meeting. Members of the public should turn their videos off unless they're presenting. That helps to reduce distractions and it helps with our bandwidth. We ask that you keep yourself muted during the meeting. To mute yourself on the Zoom platform, there's a mute button that looks like a microphone at the bottom of your screen. To mute and unmute yourself on a mobile or landline, press *6. If you'd like to participate during public comment on any agenda items or non-agenda items, when that time comes, you can raise and lower your hand by opening the reactions tab in your Zoom function and selecting the raise hand icon. If you're on a mobile or landline, you can raise and lower your hand by pressing *9. We also have an email set up that we're monitoring during the meeting. That email is pchearingcomments. That's all one word, pchearingcomments@co.monterey.ca.us. We'll be checking that email inbox and summarizing comments that we received during the meeting if we get them. That concludes my instructions. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. I think that if there are no questions, does anyone see any hands raised? And these are only questions regarding the procedure that has just been outlined.
See, Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Kofelt both have their hands up.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Roberts.
I'm actually not on the procedures. It's for our first item.
Yeah, okay, so let's stick to procedures. Thank you. Commissioner Kofelt?
Yes, I wasn't going to speak to procedures. I was just wondering if we were going to wait for the Pledge of Allegiance to the second part of our meeting.
Thank you. All right, so back to procedure then. That was going to be my question. Are we going to follow the Pledge of Allegiance, the open session, agenda additions, deletions, and corrections, or are we first adopting AB 361 so that we can do all that other stuff?
I would recommend first adopting the AB 361, and then all those other items can be taken on the regular agenda.
Perfect. Thank you, council. All right. So with council's instructions, do my fellow commissioners still want to present their questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead. Please, Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you. So is today's vote about AB 361 just for today's meeting, or is this for the month of January?
It covers you for 30 days.
Okay. I guess my only comment is with or without the governor's orders, I'm hopeful that we get back to in person. So obviously today is important to vote that we can meet remotely, but I guess if it's just for the next 30 days, I'm okay with that.
Commissioner Kofelt?
I don't have anything to add. No.
Thank you. Any other questions
See,
or comments about AB 361?
Commissioner Deal has her hand up, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Deal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out so that people keep it in mind that had this been an in-person only meeting, I would not have been able to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. All right, and with that said then, let's move on to adoption of AB 361. Any hands up?
I'd be happy to make a motion. It's Commissioner Daniels.
Were you looking for public comment, Madam Chair?
Oh.
Do we, okay, I'll take public comment on AB 361. I see no hands. Is there anything via email?
We have no emails for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magana. And now a call for the motion.
And I am happy to make that motion. This is Commissioner Daniels to consider finding pursuant to AB 361. And in order for the Planning Commission to continue to meet remotely, that the state of emergency is still in effect and that we would like to continue to meet remotely.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels. Commissioner Kofelt.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kofelt. Mr. Secretary?
Yes. Commissioner Carrillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Kofelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Daniels,
Yes.
Commissioner Deal,
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza is absent, Commissioner Monsalve,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Work.
Yes.
Motion passes. And I would like to say, we have a different emergency happening now than the one that led to the remote meetings. So I hope everyone's staying safe and dry.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. I echo that concern for everyone in our community. And with that, let's adjourn this meeting and then move into our Planning Commission session. Do we proceed again with instructions and roll call, or does council suggest we move into the Pledge of Allegiance?
I suggest move into the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, thank you, council. In that case, Commissioner Carrillo, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure, thank you. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And then now let's go ahead and move into public comments. This is a time set aside for the public to make comments on matters that are not on the agenda. Do we have any? I don't see hands up yet. Do we have anything any written correspondence, or any emails?
We have no emails.
Believe we had non-agenda emails that were for a future agenda item that will come before you at some point. But those were not forwarded, and they will be forwarded when the item comes before you.
Okay, wonderful. And that email will be addressed at that time with those specifics that were brought forward?
Yes, it was for a project that went to the zoning administrator and got referred to the planning commission. So it will be coming to the planning commission.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Then let's move on to any agenda additions, deletions, and corrections.
We have no agenda deletions, additions, or corrections for items on today's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Any commissioner comments or requests? I see no hands up. Oh, Commissioner Deal.
Thank you. I'm still settling into the new format. Commissioner comments and requests is not the same as referrals and other matters, or is it?
Excellent question. I see referrals and other matters down lower. So I don't see them as the same at this point. I was going to call for that later.
Yeah, so if I were to ask for a referral or something I would like to see on an agenda, I should do it now or then?
Then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's see. I don't see any other hands up for commissioner comments and requests. Moving into referrals and other matters.
Chair Monsalve, I want to make a correction. I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier. Multitasking. The commission mentioned the correspondence that was received from Mr. Weaver.
Correct.
That will not be going to the planning commission. That action is finalized under the zoning administrator's resolution. There was no appeal on that action. We did do a corrected resolution removing indication to the Monterey Bay Peninsula Water Management District. It is connected to Callahan, but it's not within their district. So we have a corrected resolution being uploaded to Acela. That was done administratively. We did respond via email to Mr. Weaver's other questions, providing him clarity on those questions. But just for the record, it will not be going to the planning commission as a timely appeal was not filed.
Right, that was
Okay.
two separate comments. I missed Mr. Weaver's comments, so thank you, Eric.
Well, thanks.
Thank you both. And on that note, I would like to request a copy of the, if this isn't, outside of what's allowed, but I would love to see a copy of the response to Mr. Weaver, only so that at least in my own mind, I can close that loop.
We will send that to the planning commission, but I would remind you, if you have any other further questions, do not reply to all. We'll do a blind copy so that we'll avoid that situation.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Lundquist. And thank you, Mr. Spencer. All right, now we'll then go into referrals and other matters. Commissioner Deal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question on Mr. Lundquist's last remark, because I could be confused about Mr. Weaver's letter. I'm not as prepared as I might be for a variety of reasons I think we can all probably understand. Since we're all in the same boat, as it were. But is that not an item that already came before the Planning Commission that sent back a resolution that required finalization prior to being adopted? Is that in other words, did we pass that leaving staff to make some corrections which have now theoretically been made, and then we received a letter from Mr. Weaver questioning whether or not that had occurred? Is that the scenario, or did this never come to the planning commission and I'm thinking of something else?
No, you're right. We're all thinking of multiple projects at the same time. This did go to the planning commission, and planning commission did direct revisions to the findings and indication of evidence. So that has been done. And those were some of the questions Mr. Weaver was asking. I stand corrected. This did not go to the zoning administrator. It was a planning commission resolution.
Oh, through the chair. Thank you, Mr. Lundquist. I thought I'd completely lost my mind. But on that point, it becomes ever more important that we see responses to his concerns, because they all seemed to me to be reasonable concerns. And we did take the unusual step of asking staff to go ahead and make the corrections from the meeting without returning for an adoption of the actual resolution. And if there's been a slip between cup and lip, as they used to say, we would like to look at that and make sure it's not something that would happen normally, if that makes any sense. Anyway.
Through the chair, yes, we will send those responses to the planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyway, Madam Chair, to my original point, this is not something that is for immediate concern, but given the situations in which we find ourselves today, I can't help but think of our recent hearings with respect to the Susan Street housing project. And I can maintain concerns around flooding there. So as we go through these events that actually live out those scenarios that were all theoretic, at some point, I'd just like to hear how that site fared in comparison to the information that we received predictively during the hearing. Just trying to get a feel for whether what was the outcome based on what were the predictions. And if there were a way to do that at some point, I would find it helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. And I think that's an excellent suggestion. I would look to staff to see what can be done so that we're seeing in real time whether or not what was anticipated by the project was actually covered in the unfolding of this current event.
So I happen to be working at the Office of Emergency Services with the Emergency Operations Center the past 2 weeks. So I have heard reports coming in about Pajaro River. Thus far, the river has had some minor overtopping of the levee. The town is not flooded from river levee overtopping yet, but there is localized flooding from drainage systems that are backing up, including Susan Street. So there's muscle walls, they call them, and sandbag walls that are patching some sections along the Pajaro River levee that are being tested still as slugs of water make their way from the watershed and the drainage systems into the river and down the river. Same thing is happening with the Salinas River. So that's actively being monitored, and Pajaro is still under an evacuation order as far as I know. But I don't believe that there's widespread flooding in the town or on the site at this moment, other than localized flooding from drainage systems. But they should be evacuated, or have been warned that they should be evacuating, at least at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Do any commissioners have any further questions or comments on that subject, or the just previous conversation regarding the letter from Mr. Weaver and the response to him? I saw some hands up while we were finalizing the Mr. Weaver comments, and I want to make sure I didn't miss any commissioners. Commissioner Daniels?
My comments were covered by Commissioner Deals. And it would be helpful, and I'm looking forward to the email that's forwarded to us just to see that the concerns that were brought up were addressed. And I had thought he had said that there was an issue with the minutes, but the minutes are pretty much just whatever it's called, action minutes. So I don't see that here in terms of what I'm looking at, but looking forward to seeing that letter as well, just to close the loop as Chair Monsalve had suggested.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels and Commissioner Roberts.
My concerns were the same as Commissioner Deals and Commissioner Daniels. It would be very important to me to see the response to Mr. Weaver. And it sounds like we're going to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. All right, then moving on to any other Planning Commission referrals before we leave that item. I see none. Then approval of our consent agenda.
Chair
which
Monsalve?
contains- yes.
Just, yes, I have so many thoughts as we find ourselves in the situation that we're in throughout Monterey County right now, but they are not collected and in one piece to make any sort of request for a referral at this point. But my silence isn't because I don't have so much running through my mind right now about sort of proactive, preparations and things that I think might be interesting to hear about at a county level, at a planning commission level, but I just don't have everything collected or sorted in my mind to be able to make any sort of referral right now. But my silence is not because I don't have any ideas as we manage the current crisis that we're in right now with this big, massive storm and all of the impacts that we're seeing throughout the county. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Daniels. Before we leave the subject of the storms, and I don't want to open a can of worms, but I had sat in on one or read a few documents from the Office of Emergency Services and how our county prepares for these events. And I wonder if it would be of benefit to the county if the planning commissioners had an opportunity to tour the areas that do end up flooding. I know we have a lot of our community evacuating right now, but it would be helpful to me to lay my eyes on the areas that actually do flood. And obviously we're not going to go by boat, but I just would like to see it for myself if it were safe to do so. And that's the only comment that comes to mind now, with the concern for our community and, reviewing projects and doing the best we can do for everyone. When we have the discussion of flooding and when we are talking about, the possibility of a disaster impacting an entire community or even just the residents, this is a time to really set eyes on those areas. And also the work that our Office of Emergency Services does in these times is unfathomable to the general public. And as a member of the general public, until I joined the commission, my curiosity drove me to one of those meetings, and to see how many different spokes are on that wheel was very impressive to me. So any information that could be forwarded to me now as a planning commissioner, I would find helpful. Thank you.
Yes. We just briefly on that subject, we are getting in damage assessments, at least windshield surveys from emergency responders, beginning to identify when it's safe to go back in. Our building inspectors and Environmental Health Bureau will be going in and inspecting damaged areas before people are allowed to return, just to make sure that things are safe. There have been damages along most of our rivers and in the county. Cal Fire, Cal OES have been flying drones. And so we may be able to make some of those videos available of the damage that's occurred, or at least some of the images and videos that we have. I'll have to speak with our public information officers and see if we can get that out.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Spencer. All right, and now on with approval of our consent agenda.
I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda as Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Commissioner Correa.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, we have a motion and a second. Will you take the vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Carrillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Kofelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Daniels,
Yes.
Commissioner Deal,
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza is absent, Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Work,
Yes.
Chair Monsalve.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And now on to scheduled matters. Agenda item 3 is PLN 160401. Do we have staff ready to go?
Yes, thank you,
Sure.
Chair Monsalve, members of the Planning Commission, Anna Kinga with HCD Planning. I'm here to present on agenda item number 3. Is my audio coming out? Okay, I see several hands up.
Can I just interrupt really quickly? I need to recuse myself from this item before it starts.
This is Commissioner Carrillo. I the same thing. That's why I had my hand raised. I need to recuse myself as well.
If the commissioners don't mind briefly stating why, that would be helpful for the record.
For me, it's because our law firm represents some of the tenants inside the Moss Landing Commercial Park.
And what law firm is that?
JRG Attorneys at Law.
Thanks.
And for me, I previously, several years ago, worked for a law firm representing the client. And I worked on this a little bit on this project. And my the time has passed that I think technically I'm allowed to work on it, but that in abundance of caution, I am.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Roberts, and thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. Council, does that suffice for the
Yeah,
record?
that's fine. Anna can continue now.
Ms.
Thank
Kinga,
you.
please proceed.
Thank you. So this item, PLN 160401 for the Moss Landing Commercial Park was heard before the Planning Commission on December 7th, 2022. The hearing was continued to this date to allow the applicant to clarify the general development plan. As of now, staff has not received a revised general development plan from the applicant. We have met several times and provided suggested language. As such, staff is requesting that the Planning Commission continue this hearing to January 25th, 2023, so that we may receive the revised general development plan and provide it to the Commission for consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Kinga.
And,
My
you're
question,
welcome.
for council is if the commission decides to move this forward to January 25th, do we still listen to public comments, applicant comments, any discussion at all?
Yeah, if the applicant has any comments, and then you can open public comment as to the issue of this continuance.
Perfect, thank you. All right, is the applicant present?
Chair Monsalve, I do not see the applicant present. I believe an agent for some of the tenants might be present, but not the applicant for the property owner.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kanga. Before I go to public comment, I do see one commissioner's hand up. And after him, if any other commissioners have any comments on this matter, raise your hands. And Mr. Kofelt, you have the floor.
Thank you. I wanted to know if moving it to the 25th is sufficient time if a general development plan has yet been received. Is it going to be received in a sufficient time and then published? Is that going to work realistically?
I see what you're saying. Thank you, Ms. Kanga.
Unfortunately, staff has not received any correspondence from the client or the applicant's attorney. We were trying to push for the next hearing in order to allow the tenants sufficient time to complete their state permit processing. So I guess the options that we have are to either continue it to the 25th or continue it to a date certain or continue it to the first meeting in February.
Ms. Kanga, did you say continue to a date uncertain?
That's correct. If we continue it to a date uncertain, we will have to renotice it, even if we are able to make the 25th.
Okay. I have a quick question. How does this impact the tenants if we continue to a date uncertain?
So the state requires that the entitlements be received prior to expiration of their provisional licenses, and each tenant has obtained their provisional license at a different date. I'm not certain when the first one would expire. Perhaps if the agent for one of the tenants is in attendance, perhaps they can answer that question. But sooner rather than later would be preferable.
Yeah, I think I might add to that. The Bureau of Cannabis Control, I can't remember what they're called now. They've changed their names a few times. Had a provisional licensing program. The provisional licensing program allowed cannabis businesses to operate under a provisional license while they were going through the permitting process and getting local permissions in order to get your standard typical state license. Those state licenses need to be renewed every year for cannabis operations. And the provisional licensing program at the state has expired. So as of last year was the last time they could renew a provisional license. So every operator who obtained a provisional license had 1 year from the last renewal, which could be early this year into later this year, depending on the timing of when they received that provisional license. So we're trying to get the land use entitlements in place on the property in order to make way for the local cannabis business permits and the local permissions that are needed for each operator to get their state license that's not a provisional license. So the time is running out a little bit. We don't have the exact dates for every operator at the Moss Landing Commercial Park, but they will start to expire depending on when their last provisional license extension occurred in the last year.
Okay, very helpful. Do my fellow commissioners have any comments on this issue regarding the scheduling? No. Okay. All right, let's open it to the public. Comments, please, regarding just the issue of continuing this. None. Are there any written comments?
We have no written correspondence for this item.
Thank you. If we don't move this to later this month and then just continue moving it that way, then we run the risk of creating a licensing conflict for the tenants.
Yeah, well, yes, we could get more information on the exact dates that the provisional license expire for operators there. I believe that our staff, Anna and Fiona, have reached out to the applicant, given them deadlines by which we would need information submitted. We don't have a lot of confidence, it sounds like, that we will have information in time. We may not. If we don't, we'll ask for another continuance. If we do continue it to the next meeting, if we do have it, we'll prepare the appropriate documents and get that package out for the next meeting. I think that's the direction we were requesting, and that's suggested the recommendation from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Commissioner Daniels?
I was going to make that motion and that recommendation and hope for the best. So why don't we do that? Why don't we make a motion to continue this item to our next meeting, January 25th, and hope for the best. If that works for my colleagues. As long as we can continue it again if need be, but I think that's the best case forward for the tenants at least.
Right. All right, Commissioner Kofelt?
Is there any procedural limitation to a number of continuances? In other words, can you keep doing this perpetually if the applicant's not cooperating? I mean, I'm sympathetic with the operators, but it sounds like we've got an issue with the applicant.
I agree, Commissioner Kofelt. Ms. Kenga, how many continuances can we grant on this?
That's a good question. Perhaps
There might
Greg
be,
can answer that.
yeah, I don't know of any limitations on the number of times an item can be continued. I think at some point we either expect something to be submitted in the right direction, or we put it off and just renotice it. If the planning commission has a feeling about the number of times they want to continue something before we renotice a hearing, that may be appropriate, but unless county council has something, I'm not aware of any limitations on the number of continuances to date certain.
I agree. I'm not either.
Okay, terrific. So that answers, I think, both of Commissioner Kofelt's concerns, and we do have a motion. Is there a second or any other commissioner comments?
Through the chair, I would second the motion, Commissioner Deal.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. All right, Mr. Spencer, we have a motion and a second.
Okay, Commissioner Carrillo's recused. Commissioner Kofelt?
Yes.
Commissioner Daniels?
Yes.
Commissioner Deal?
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza is absent, Commissioner Roberts recused, Commissioner Work,
Yes.
and Chair Monsalve.
Yes.
Motion passes with 2 recused, 1 absent, and 7 yes.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. All right, then on to agenda item number 4, PLN 210066.
Madam Chair, I see Commissioner Work's hand up.
Thank you. Commissioner Work? You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question before we started this one. I've missed it on the beginning, where I was supposed to say something before we started. Sorry. I was just curious about, due to the last project that we dealt with on this area, I was curious if we need to know the name of the architect that built the house that they're going to demolish and how old it is, and if this is a new whatever the word is that anyway, I just wonder if we need to know these things before we go any further.
Okay. Mr. Spencer, that sounds like a procedural question before we consider a project. Will we get that information in the staff report, or is that a question we would ask later? Or as Commissioner Work is asking, do we hear that now before we proceed with the report?
I think that staff report will be provided. And then if there are questions, that those questions could be directed to staff after the presentation. I don't know that we have all of that information in our presentation, so we'd be happy to answer those questions if they're not answered in the presentation to the extent we can.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Commissioner Work, does that satisfy your questions for now?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. I don't think we have any other questions from commissioners, so I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Good morning again, Chair Monsalve, Planning and Planning Commissioners, Anna Kenya with HCD Planning here to present on item number 4, PLN 210066 SMD. The subject property is located at 3141 17 Mile Drive in Pebble Beach, southeast of the intersection of the 17 Mile Drive and Signal Hill Road. Zoning on the property is low density residential, 1.5 acres per unit with a design control overlay district, and it is in the coastal zone. Development on the property is subject to the policies of the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan and regulations in the Coastal Implementation Plans, Parts 1 and 5. The project includes the demolition of a one-story, 3,446 square foot single-family dwelling with a 558 square foot garage. These structures were built in 1956. A historic report was provided as part of the application, and the historian noted that the structure and the site did not qualify for any historical significance. The project also includes the construction of a 6,590 square foot two-story single-family dwelling with a 1,440 square foot attached garage, all within 100 feet of environmentally sensitive habitat areas, 750 feet of a positive archaeological site, and resulting in ridgeline development. As illustrated on this slide, the development is confined within the building pad that was graded in 1956, which is highlighted in yellow. On this slide, the areas that are outlined in red illustrate the existing structures, walls, and flat work to be demolished. The areas that are outlined in black is the proposed new structure footprint, and the areas in gray are walkways and new hardscape. The property is located within an area known to contain remnant native sand dune habitat. In accordance with the land use plan and coastal implementation plan, 2 biological surveys were conducted, the last one being a spring survey in February 2020. The project biologist visited nearby sites known to support special status species found in dune habitat prior to visiting the site in order to confirm flowering in the spring. 3 out of the 4 plant species on the nearby site were observed, and the biologist was able to confirm the absence of special status plant species on the subject property. The middle photo on the slide is an aerial image of the site, and the photo to the top left corner shows the thick blanket of ice plant mats on the site. The other 3 photos show the proposed disturbance areas that are outside of the structural footprint. The areas highlighted here in yellow indicate the disturbance areas outside of the existing structural coverage, which totals approximately 3,578 square feet. Although the project biologist confirmed that this area does not contain ESHA and has been disturbed with flatwork and non-native landscaping, the applicant has voluntarily proposed restoration of approximately 7,754 square feet of area currently covered with invasive ice plants. The restoration areas are shown on this slide that are highlighted in green. The project has also been conditioned requiring the applicant to submit a final restoration plan for review and approval, as well as conduct monitoring for successful implementation. The project is also conditioned in accordance with the Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan Policy 13 and Coastal Implementation Plan regulations to require the applicant to convey portions of the site outside of the development area to the Del Monte Forest Conservancy through a conservation scenic easement. Staff would like to note that this easement would be contiguous to 2 parcels, one to the south and one to the northeast. Research information indicates that there are known archaeological resources in proximity of the development, and in accordance with the land use plan and coastal implementation plan, archaeological assessments were performed. Originally, the project included construction of a concrete slab foundation, and due to the soils conditions, over excavation and recompaction would have been required. So due to the sensitive archaeological resources nearby, the applicant worked with their geotechnical engineer, who determined that the use of a helical pier foundation would be feasible instead. Helical piers are like giant screws that are affixed into the bedrock below, allowing reduced site disturbance, and the grading has been minimized to roughly about 100 cubic yards. The project archaeologist assessed the soil borings obtained by the engineer and found that there are no resource indicators, and based on the foundation design, there are no assumed impacts to archaeological resources. In accordance with the policies and regulations, standard conditions have been applied to ensure protection of resources if they are accidentally uncovered during site disturbance activities. Del Monte Forest Land Use Plan Figure 3 illustrates that the site is within the public view shed, and staff's visit confirmed that the existing structure and project staging is visible from 17 Mile Drive and Fanshell Beach. The top 2 photos on the slide show that from Fanshell Beach, the dwelling is and would be ridgeline as it silhouettes against the sky. Findings to approve this development require evidence indicating that the development would not create an adverse visual impact from a common public viewing area, and that there are no alternative locations. The ocean-facing elevation shown on the bottom of this slide illustrates that although there is an addition of a second story, The architectural style incorporates flat roofs and wide elements which evoke a low-lying horizontal structure. In addition, the colors and materials provide a darker, more matted look, which contrasts from the existing white stucco, thus allowing the improvement to be subordinate to the existing topography and surrounding vegetation. That can be seen on the rendering shown on this slide, which was provided by the applicant. This shows how the proposed development better blends into the hillside. Although resiting of the structure to the west could avoid ridgeline development, it would greatly impact visual resources, would have a greater potential to impact archaeological resources as well as biological resources. In addition, moving the structure forward would require development on slopes in excess of 30%, as well as retaining walls and other site improvements. Therefore, findings to allow ridgeline development in this case can be made. So based on the findings and the evidence provided in the draft resolution, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find that the project as proposed and conditioned qualifies as a categorical exemption from CEQA and approve the combined development permit to allow the demolition and rebuild of a single family dwelling within 100 feet of environmentally sensitive habitat areas, within 750 feet of a positive archaeological resource, and resulting in ridgeline development. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Kenga. Fellow commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Deal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellent presentation, Ms. Kenga. Thank you. Question, would the existing conservation and scenic easement allow for additional habitat restoration should that be desired?
Through the chair, Anna Kenga, yes, that's because because there is a potential to restore the entire area. Staff will be adding exception language to allow the maintenance of the restoration that is proposed, as well as the future restoration and future maintenance should that occur with the current property owner or any future property owner.
Thank you, Ms. Kenga. A question about the reflectivity of the windows facing the west. That's going to have an impact on the view from 17 Mile Drive.
Through the chair, Anna Kenga, staff does not have the construction plans that show the type of window material. However, Title 21 or Title 24 glazing through the California Building Code would require some sort of treatment on the windows. And then in addition, the style of the architecture and the design allows or includes larger overhangs, including on that west-facing side, which would provide some sort of a cover to reduce the glare on the windows.
Through the chair, my issue is, as I'm sure all of you have heard me go on about more than you want to, when the sun sets and all the people are out there admiring the view, in many cases, we get a huge glare off of windows facing the west at that time. And so some consideration for that with respect to viewshed analysis seems to me to be specifically appropriate in places in view areas with west-facing windows. I also wanted to simply congratulate Ms. Kenga for having put together a clear and understandable set of findings and evidence with respect to the ridgeline development. I really appreciate having the standards in front of me and the findings that are required by those standards easily ascertainable. I would simply want to point out that it is still the case that additional structure is being added to the ridgeline question. In other words, there's higher building than there was. So it would be a different analysis in different parts of the county, depending on what the standards were. But because this staff report included so clearly the applicable standards, I just wanted to thank the planner for having gone to the trouble to put that out so clearly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal, and thank you, Ms. Kenga. Any other commissioner comments? I see none. All right, is the applicant in attendance, and would the applicant like to make any comments? Ms. Kenga, I don't see a hand up, and I don't know if there's an applicant representative in attendance.
Yes, Chair Monsalve. I do see Dale Ellis, who is the agent, as well as Anatoly, who I believe is the designer, both in attendance.
Hello, this is Gail at Anthony Lombardo.
Gail.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. This is Gail Hatter Crawford with Anthony Lombardo and Associates. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. First of all, I agree the staff's presentation is very thorough. We have no issues with the findings and evidence, the recommended conditions. I did want to respond to the one question regarding the windows. The applicant is proposing to use what is called bronze glass. When combined with the overhangs, that will resolve the concerns about the impacts from the view shed for that, for what the public will see. So we are okay with you adding a condition to require the bronze glass to avoid that visual impact. Other than that, to respond to the restoration and the continuity as far as preservation of ESHA or native species, the Chief of Planning had specifically asked for the lower area of the site because it was connected to other projects that had done restoration, so that there would be connectivity and further advance the goals of restoration of habitat. And other than that, we have no comments, but are available for responses to any public comment.
Thank you, Gail. Does the applicant agree to all of the other conditions that are listed?
Yes, we're in agreement with all conditions.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hand up to speak on behalf of the applicant. Oh, I don't know if that is a representative for the applicant or if that's public comment. Hand went down. So let's open it up to public comment now then. All right. Macy Medpor.
Massey Metaport. Can you hear me?
Massey Metapor, thank you. Yes, you're welcome to speak. You do have the floor, and there is a limit on public comment.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Spencer.
Yeah, I am the neighbor of this applicant on 17 Mile Drive. And first of all, the staff prepared a great report. And I'm very excited that they are demolishing this house and putting a new house there. And I support this project, but I just want to remind all of you, when my application comes in 2 weeks, look at the comparison. The lot coverage, mine is less. The FAR, mine is less. And the ESHA development, I have a lot more. And the ridge line, although the view shed is an impact, but I agree for the approval. I would like all of you to extend the same consideration so that the justice is provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Massey. Any other public comments? All right, I see none, so back to the commission. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Carrillo?
I just had one question. It has nothing to do with the findings. I just was going through the cultural resources. And I know that the original assessment by the archaeologist Susan Morley talked about the original the original plans were to do a slab foundation and sub-excavation of soils, and then they changed it and submitted it to that would be reducing the total grading to approximately 100 cubic yards. I just wanted to know what was with the original plan submitted, how much of a difference is in what they are doing on the grading? Is that something that was identified, or information I can just kind of just to know about what the difference is and how less of an impact they're doing it is my question.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sorry about that. It's through the chair annexing. I do not have the actual number, but reading through the geotechnical report, there were areas of older fill that were not compacted on the site. So it would have required the over excavation and then the sub excavation. And I'd be making assumptions, but perhaps Anatoly, who is the designer, has the actual figure of the cubic yardage of the previous design.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Anatoly Ostretsov. I'm the architect. We don't have exact number, but just based on the soils report showing the depth of not compacted soil at some points down to 16 feet, it will be a very significant number of excavation to take it out and to bring it back with proper compaction to 95%. Just my wild guess would be probably 20 times more.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Anatoly. And now for Commissioner Roberts' comments.
I actually just, I don't really have many comments other than just a simple typo in the evidence, finding an evidence on page 7. It said a site visit was done on December 23rd, 2023, and I'm guessing that was 2022. It's finding 5, evidence B.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carrillo, you still have your hand up. Do you have any other comments?
No, I don't. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, I see no other commissioner comments. Can that edit be made on that typo, Ms. Kenga?
Yes, through the chair, I would also like to suggest that in addition to fixing the typo on finding 5 evidence B, adding language to finding 5 evidence C relative to utilizing bronze glass windows, as well as modifying condition 8, which is the exterior lighting plan in a VS Ridgeline area, to include similar language requiring the applicant to show that the bronze window or bronze glass will be utilized for their exterior windows.
Thank you, Ms. Kenga. And before I leave the subject altogether, I want to make sure to get back to Commissioner Work because he had some questions at the very beginning. Commissioner Work, do you want to repeat those questions and see if we can get you some answers?
No, I'm okay. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Deal.
Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Kenga's suggestion with respect to the quote unquote bronze treatment, and suggest that on the part of the county, as opposed to the part of the applicant, I would prefer that it was framed as an outcome rather than a method. Prefer that it says something like all available opportunities shall be used to reduce the glare of the light from the view shed. I don't think we need to be making a statement on whether or not we think bronze glass is the best thing there. And by the time they get around to building the house, who knows what the next best thing is going to be. So just in general, I would prefer that we stick to outcomes versus methods, but otherwise I really appreciate the changes that are proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. Ms. Kenga?
Yes, ma'am. Staff can make those changes.
And your hand is up.
Oh, great.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Deal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If there are no further comments, I'd like to go ahead and move that we adopt staff's recommendation as modified in the hearing today.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. Do we have a second?
This Commissioner Creel, second.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Mr. Spencer, you have a first and a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Creel,
Yes.
Commissioner Kofelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Daniels,
Yes.
Commissioner Deal,
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendoza is absent, Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Work,
Yes.
and Chair Monsalve.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
Thank
On
you.
to, thank you. On to agenda item number 5, PLN 220174. Whenever staff's ready.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Phil Angelo. I'll be giving staff's presentation. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So the project is PLN 220174, and the property is the Mission San Antonio de Pado at 1 Mission Road in the South County Area Plan. The mission is a historic California mission constructed in the 1800s and restored primarily between the late 1940s and early 1950s. The project proposes to demolish an existing caretaker unit that was constructed in 1935 as a contractor's office and is non-contributing to the historical mission. The project would also include revealing the foundations of the Mayordomos residence, which is a historic structure that's partially underneath the caretaker unit, and then treating those with a lime coating plaster and installing a rustic interpretive sign. And these alterations are consistent with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. And the project was referred to the Historic Resources Review Board, who unanimously recommended approval as proposed. Or I'm sorry, approval with 2 conditions, that an archaeological and tribal cultural monitor monitor the excavation work, which are incorporated into staff's recommended conditions. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA and approve a use permit to allow the alterations. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Angelo. Commissioners, do you have any questions? I see none. All right, is the applicant present?
Good morning, everybody. This is Brett Brankwitz, the architect for the project. I've been working out at the mission now for about 10 years. and we've been doing restoration work out there. We've essentially done all the core buildings. Now we're sort of moving to the outlying things such as this contractor's office. We really feel this is an opportunity to reveal the 1835 underlying Major Domo's residence, and it's a much more historically important building than this dilapidated contractor's office. So I appreciate you taking this project on, and I'm available for any questions. I've reviewed all the conditions and they're acceptable. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Brinkowitz. All right, nothing yet from commissioners. Any public comments or any written comments?
We have no written correspondence for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magana. I see no hands up from the public. Back to the commissioners. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Mr. Getzelman, Commissioner Getzelman, sorry.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but unless there are any other commissioner questions or comments, I would like to move for approval of staff's recommendation as modified.
Thank you, Commissioner. I still see no other hands up for questions, so let's ask for that second.
Be happy to second. This is Kate Daniels.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels. Mr. Spencer, we have a first and a second.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Carrillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Kofelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Daniels,
Yes.
Commissioner Deal,
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Work,
Yes.
and Chair Monsalve.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you, Mr. Spencer. Now on to agenda item 6, Monterey County Planning Commission Nomination Committee. Mr. Spencer, you want to
Yeah,
tell
I
us about
believe,
this?
I believe this is just the annual nomination of a subcommittee to nominate a new chair and vice chair for the year. Commissioner Mendoza has been serving as the chair and has done an admirable job along with your help, Commissioner Monsalve. Annually, the commission appoints a committee to appoint a new chair and vice chair for the year, and that's what this item is about.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. And because it's been noted in the past that there is already a procedure for this, is this nomination committee a legal requirement for us?
I believe it's part of your rules, your adopted planning commission rules. It's not part of, I don't think it's part of the county code or law, but it's part of your operating procedures.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. So my understanding of the board's preference is that a nominating committee be set up to appoint the next chair and vice chair in order of appointment to the Planning Commission. And so I was assigned to be chair, vice chair for this past term, and more likely than not will be assigned to be chair for the next term, and the commissioner that joined after me will more likely than not be assigned to be the vice chair. Do I have that correctly? Mr. Spencer?
I think Commissioner Deal has her hand up. She's been involved in this much longer than I have, so.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spencer. I'm not looking for fellow commissioners to drive the subject. I'm looking for the facts, just so we all understand.
Chair, I can read the rules and how this is established. It's Rule 3 of your rules for transaction of business. And it says at the first regular meeting in January, the chair shall appoint a nominating committee to nominate a chair and vice chair. At the first regular meeting in February, the nominating committee shall provide its nominees and the commission shall elect a chair and vice chair. So it's not specified how you all go about that. Commissioner Deal could, I'm sure, provide context on how it's been done in the past, but there's no requirement within your rules about who is nominated.
Or what order we're nominated in.
Correct.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Council. Commissioner Deal, your comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would speak to, as Council said, the practice we have used in the past, which is not the same as a rule. And that is that many years ago, we wanted to promote the culture that all planning commissioners are equal and that everyone has both the right and the responsibility to step into any role at any time, to kind of prevent the sense that somebody is more important than somebody else, and to give everybody a chance at experiencing that role, which I know for me has certainly helped with my participation effectively in other roles. So the practice has been that the commissioner who has been on the commission the longest without serving as chair was the next one up. And the nominating committee has, for the past many, many years now, I know it's over 6 and it could be over 10 now, provided that been provided that information by somebody who keeps the records, who is no longer me, and was able to nominate the person for vice chair to the vice chair that we already nominated, that they typically, as the chair has stated, asked to move up to being the chair, giving continuity, giving practice, give that. And then the next person would be the person who has been on the commission for the longest period of time without serving as chair. And the reason that that's different between that and the next person appointed is that sometimes we have a situation where the next person appointed was appointed immediately before the upcoming term. So we had somebody who had been on the commission for a very short period of time, a couple of months, then ended up being the next appointee because there'd been a dearth. And we didn't think that that was really a good practice for them or for the commission. So that's why the subtle distinction between the next person appointed and the person who has been on the commission longest without serving has been something we've been using as a guideline. But again, that's all something the nominating committee is entitled to, as council says, look at, ignore, don't ignore. But we really appreciated at the time when we started doing this, the fact that that put aside all the discussions of whose turn it was and what district was coming up and whether somebody had a more important reason to be chair than somebody else, and really promoted that sense of we're all equal here and we all bear the responsibility for the way these meetings run equally. So thank you for indulging me in my annual rant.
Thank you, Commissioner Deal. You're my first nomination for the nominating committee. But I see another hand up, Commissioner Roberts.
And I just wanted to add to Commissioner Deal's kind of history of how we've gone about this, and that since I've been responsible for twisting a few arms of people who were trying to politely decline being chair, I also wanted to share that to me, it's really important that each district is represented as chair and that it doesn't seem like whichever district is hogging up the chair position. And I think that that has, for me personally, just serving, has made this feel like a very fair and equal opportunity for everybody as well. So if I twist your arm ever in the future, just know that's why. It truly is to benefit the county and all of our districts.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. And you're my second nomination to the nominating committee.
Through the chair.
Yes. Yes, Commissioner Deal.
This committee. Thank you. I would like to respectfully request that the chair reconsider, since I have served on the nominating committee more years than I care to think about. Really believe that it might be appropriate for others to have the opportunity to do that job. Thank you.
I thought the same, but your grasp of the why, in my opinion, will serve very well when I appoint my third committee to the nominating committee. And my third appointee, I was hoping would be Commissioner Carrillo.
I thank you for that, but I had a question before. Can I ask a question now, Madam Chair? Is this standard procedure to do the nomination committee for all the county commissions, or is this just specific for the planning commission?
I believe that each committee has their own way of doing it, but it's fairly standard. Committees appoint a chair in some fashion annually, typically.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's
but just-
slightly different
Yeah.
based on their operating procedures, planning commission, and the historical way in which they've done that. There are some committees where the same chair continues to serve term after term, because that's the person that the committee likes to be chair. So each one's done differently, based on the rules and procedures.
Through the chair, can I ask, so then my question was, does the commission, all the county commissions go through the nomination committee is to elect the chair?
No, not always.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just an agendized item, and the committee nominates and votes in that meeting. There's not always a committee appointed to nominate.
And just to add to my nominations to the nominating committee, when I joined the nominating committee, it was very enlightening to me as a newcomer to the Planning Commission to hear how the veteran commissioners made that decision on who to suggest that the Planning Commission nominate as chair and vice chair. So that's why I think it would be very helpful to have Commissioner Deal, Commissioner Roberts, and Commissioner Carrillo working together on that process. Commissioner Deal, can I get you to reconsider? This is me
Madam
twisting an
Chair,
arm as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I really respectfully would prefer that you didn't. I think I understand your point and I applaud your point, and it only takes one person with the history to do that. The maximum exposure of new people would certainly be a good idea. I live in fear that when I stop being on the commission, this information will go away. So from my point of view, the more people who have had the opportunity to articulate it, the better. And as Commissioners Gesselman and Commissioner Roberts have certainly served on these committees will say, it only takes articulating it clearly and then pursuing it with the nominees. That's really the thing. And I frankly have already done this many, many, many times, and I'm pretty clear on the process as opposed to somebody for whom it might be a new experience, and am serving on other committees. So I would respectfully decline.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Deal. I have another person in mind for the commission, but first let me hear Commissioner Daniels' comments.
I lowered my hand. I was just going to say, I mean, with everything that's been stated today, are we clear about who the recommendation would be at this point in time? Perhaps we can just move forward.
Without a nominating committee?
Well, it just sounds like we've walked through the process in this conversation. And so if that's clear, or at least it can just be information as a recommendation to the committee, and the committee can still meet. But in the time that I've been on this commission, it has been the procedure has been the same. So it should, I would suggest that we continue with that procedure and just move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And
Council, I'm not sure I am clear on Commissioner Daniel's suggestion. It sounds like the suggestion was to bypass the nominating committee and use the procedure that the nominating committee has already used to move forward with the nomination, but I'm not sure we can bypass the nominating committee if it's part of our board rules.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what Commissioner Daniels said or not. She can specify, but we need to be mindful of what was agendized for today, which is appointment of a nominating committee and of the rules you've established that I read to you just a minute ago.
Thank you.
Just through the chair, I'm not suggesting we skip the nominating committee necessarily. I was just saying, I think, especially taking into consideration Commissioner Deal's comments, we've all been familiarized with this process now. Those of us who've been on the commission, and so we should just move forward and continue the same practices and move on.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels. So back to the nominating committee. Commissioner Roberts, are you willing to serve?
Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Carrillo, are you willing to serve?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And then the third, then Commissioner Work, would you be willing to serve?
Yes.
Terrific, thank you. All right, those would be my 3 nominations for the nominating committee. Any commissioner comments on those 3 nominations?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
My only request would be if, I believe staff has kept a copy of the appointment dates, and if they would just send that to the 3 of us on the nominating committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Staff, Mr. Spencer?
I apologize. I got sidetracked for a moment. I think that we do have records. If I think I have that question correctly. We have some records for who's served and who's been on the committee the longest, or the commission. And so we can provide those. We'll have to do a little bit of digging, but those will be provided to the nominating committee or the planning commission, depending on which way you vote.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. So if you can provide that to the nominating committee, and the nominating committee is comprised of Commissioner Roberts, Commissioner Carrillo, and Commissioner Work. I've asked for commissioner comments regarding the appointees to the nominating committee. Council, do I need to ask for public comment? Yes, okay.
Yes, you do.
Oh, I have a commissioner comment first. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you. I guess my recommendation would be to possibly send the information to all commissioners. If the intent is for more people, more of the commissioners to know the process and information, at least I would like to have that same information. I'm not sure how the other commissioners, but if everybody gets the same information, and if they, again, as the intent is to get more people acquainted with the process, it might be good for people at least to look at it and see what it entails. Anyways, that would be my recommendation. If the other commissioners don't want information, I surely would like to have that information also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gonzalez, for that comment. That was my goal in having this very long and windy conversation on the subject, because yes, while Commissioner Deal and Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Daniels are well aware of the procedure, there were a few of us on here who maybe benefited from this conversation. So Commissioner Roberts, your comments?
I just wanted to say that I've also served on the nominating committee several times, and I'd be happy if Commissioner Gonzalez is interested. And I usually the outgoing chair serves as an advisor to the nominating committee. So if those three people wanted to be on the nominating committee, and if they had any questions, could speak to Commissioner Gonzalez. Oh, sorry, Chair Mendoza. As an advisor to the commission, to the nominating committee, I think I'd be happy to allow somebody else to do it.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. I considered Chair Mendoza, but without having had the opportunity to include him in the conversation or to check with him first, I don't want to put him in that position. I like the idea of having someone who is thoroughly aware of the procedure, working with the newest members of the commission. Commissioner Carrillo and Commissioner Work, do you feel as the newest commissioners that you could take this on without the knowledge and expertise of a commissioner such as Commissioner Deal or Commissioner Roberts?
This Commissioner Correa, I think we can, but you know, I think we can.
Okay. So with that in mind, go ahead, Commissioner Work.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I would be fine either way also, especially if we could get some of the history. If Mr. Spencer could get us that, then we're not nominating somebody that was just in. That would be my only
Just to clarify, we have the information on the planning commissioner's tenure and who served as chair over the course of the year. So we can send that to all of the commissioners, I think was the request. So we will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. All right, so Commissioner Roberts, if you don't want to serve, then we can twist another arm.
I would be happy to allow somebody else, and I would nominate Commissioner Gonzalez.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes, I don't mind doing it. I just don't know if it matters if you have two commissioners from the same district in the nominating committee. But if not, then I'm willing to do it.
Excellent point. Commissioner Deal?
Madam Chair. Yes, this seems to me to have gotten awfully complicated, Chair, and I think unnecessarily so from my point of view. In the past, the chair has served as an ex officio advisor to the nominating committee because in our practice, the chair is unlikely to be nominated again. We have then nominated 3 people to serve on that committee. Usually, given the practice, that involves a conversation of probably less than half an hour to just go over the information and come up with a clarified understanding that the information they received was correct and that the next person up is in fact going to still be there when it comes time for them to serve. That's really been the only variable. So the other part of that is that since you're not at a quorum, there would be nothing wrong with another commissioner being involved. I should think, I don't think the nominating committee format is specified. So if you wanted 4, you could have that, but I think the 3 makes sure that the chair can be an ex officio advisor should that be necessary. Now that the staff has institutionalized this information, I gave them the spreadsheet in 2018, I believe. That means that the staff is also there to advise people about the situation and provide the knowledge and data that's necessary. With respect to who's on the nominating committee and what districts they come from, again, because of the practice, this becomes less of a concern. If that group the nominating committee wishes to depart from the standard practice, they have the right to recommend that. The commission can then vote on whether or not that's what they want to do. So I myself would be unconcerned about whether there were two people from the same district on that committee. It wouldn't make me feel worried at all. And if you wanted to have three people and the chair is ex officio, that would be what we've done in the past. So just throwing that in there as well.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Deal. So then we've revised the nominating committee. Yes, Commissioner Roberts?
One last thing to add, since we're talking about it. The only thing I think we've tried to do in terms of the nominating committee is not nominate people who are potentially in line to be nominated. Otherwise, we haven't had any real restrictions on districts or who's represented in the nominating committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. Commissioner Mendoza, would you be willing to accept then that nomination to serve on the nominating committee instead of Commissioner Roberts and work with Commissioner Work and Commissioner Carrillo?
You mean Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes, I'm sorry. What did I say?
Anyways, yes, I would.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so the commission has discussed at great and detailed length the nominations to the nominating committee, and they stand as Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Work, Commissioner Carrillo.
Was Commissioner Mendoza did we want Commissioner Mendoza on there as ex officio?
I think,
Heard that comment made.
do we have to force him even though he's not here to comment on that? I've asked him, and if he's able and available, then the nominating committee can check in with him. If that's been standard practice, then maybe he's expecting it, but otherwise, I'd rather not say so.
I think it's
Required?
not required. It's in the discretion of the planning commission. In my experience, being absent doesn't prevent you from being nominated for.
All right, then, as the commission wishes, and we will nominate Commissioner Mendoza as advisor to the nominating committee.
I'm not sure if we need a vote on that.
Well, at
We
first,
do need a vote, and it also needs to go out for public comment.
Okay, thanks.
we should get public comment before we vote?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So any comments from the public on the nominating committee? I see no hands up. Are there any written comments?
We have no written correspondence for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Magana. All right, Mr. Oh, we have a comment. Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's at this point or after the motion passes or fails. Like in terms of procedures, like who sets up the meeting? Where do we meet? Is it virtual? Is it in person? Those type of things. And I'm not sure. Well, anyways, I'm not sure it should be here or not.
Staff can help coordinate a meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. So for the nominating committee, once approved, staff will help the three of you get together. And with that, Mr. Spencer, can we get a vote? Oh, we need
Do we get the first and the second public comment?
Well, I motion that those three people be, we had public comment, there was no written correspondence, and there were no hands up. So with that, I'll make the motion to appoint Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Work, and Commissioner Carrillo to the nominating committee. Is there a second? Commissioner Kofelt?
Is that with including Commissioner
Mendoza
Mendoza
as ex
as
officio,
the,
yes,
yeah.
advisor. Thank you.
If that's the case, then I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kofelt. All right, Mr. Secretary,
Okay,
first and a second.
Commissioner Creo,
Yes.
Commissioner Kofelt,
Yes.
Commissioner Daniels,
Yes.
Commissioner Deal,
Yes.
Commissioner Getzelman,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Work,
Yes, and I just like that. I'd be willing to come up and have coffee with you guys.
great, thank you. And Chairman Salve,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you, Mr. Spencer. All right, and does staff notify Mr. Mendoza?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. All right, on to department report.
As I mentioned, I guess in our special meeting, we have been helping to staff the Emergency Operations Center and are hoping that everyone is staying safe. I don't have anything to report on the department end. We're just coming out of our eco recess and are excited for 2023 and all that's to come this year. And I'm not sure if Eric has anything he wants to add on the department report.
I just have two things. Due to the storm events, we had planned to present permit processing, permit streamlining, and making suggestions to the Board of Supervisors on workforce related to permitting, both at the planning level and then at the construction level. It looks like that this meeting will be rescheduled in February 7th. So I would invite the public and the planning commissioners, if you're available, to listen in. If you're not, we'll be reporting out on what the Board of Supervisors has indicated to us related to those issues. This is on the heels of our annual reports related to Citygate, which Citygate report, you may recall, was the report that initiated the dissolution of the Resource Management Agency into two separate agencies, Public Works, Facilities, Parks, and Housing and Community Development. The incoming chair has requested that this report be provided to the Board of Supervisors for discussion. We also, as you probably have heard, we have some new staff, executive staff. We have a new chief administrative officer that will be making her rounds, and perhaps we can invite her at some point when she's settled in to meet you all. And she's excited about her work with housing and community development, and so are we. We also have a new sheriff, and she'll be assisting us with our implementation of our noise ordinance. And then we have recently promoted Darby Marshall to our housing program manager. So he's excited about that and has some great goals for this coming year related to the creation of housing with the demand that the state and ultimately AMBAG has put on us related to our housing obligations, and that being integrated into the housing element, which you've already had an opportunity to start talking about. So we have a great year full of lots of wonderful policy and project discussions. Thank you. Appreciate it, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Lundquist. I'm ready to adjourn, but I do see a hand up among the public. Council, is it all right to give Ms. Kay the floor?
I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Please promote
Go
public
ahead,
comment.
Ms. Kay.
Thank
Thank
you. I'll
you.
be brief. I wasn't able to listen to the very beginning of the meeting. I have no electricity at my house. It'll be out for days. Power pole came down with a tree and a private road, and there's probably 10 or more houses. So we're not a priority, but with Craig Spencer being part of the Office of Emergency Services coordinating committee of all this flooding and everything going on. I understand, I did just get word recently that Pajaro is being evacuated again and that the Pajaro River Bridge is closed. So I don't know whether you gave a brief, maybe a very brief update of what's going on for the planning commissioners, because I think it's important to know, you know, with housing and stuff, where things are going to be a problem possibly in the future, if not for today. Thank you.
And I'll just add,
Thank you.
I believe a press release will be coming out. It's either out or will be coming out momentarily from Monterey County with the Pajaro update. So please look for that.
Thank you, Council.
Where would that be
Spencer?
found? I apologize. Where would that be found?
We have, Madam Chair, if I might respond.
Please, Mr. Spencer.
We have the Office of Emergency Services has a dedicated webpage for the winter storm events. It's got links to all the current warnings and evacuation orders. And it has a map of those areas that are under warnings, orders. It's got areas where sandbags and sand can be picked up, and shelter locations. Pajaro, as you can see, is under an evacuation order.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Kay, for that comment. We did speak on the subject of the community's current situation and the challenges that everyone's facing at the very beginning of the meeting, but it's obviously not a discussion that is held in its entirety here today. We are all very concerned and asking for staff to keep us all informed. And with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellent job as usual.